I'm Evan Happel. I'm with Boss Talks, and we are at Apartmentalize 2024. Super excited to be here. I'm with Dom Beveridge, and we're going to talk about what's going on here. I'm with Community Boss. If you haven't watched Boss Talks, I'm actually approaching episode 100. Super excited, and it's really great to do this bonus episode from Apartmentalize with Dom. So, Dom, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad we managed to make it happen. I'm a fan of Boss Talks, so it's nice to do a sort of IRL version of the show.
No, it's awesome. So, Dom, I know you've been going to sessions and things, and you're definitely a person that has a kind of pulse on what's going on in the industry. Coming into the show, what were you thinking what you were going to see, and has it met your expectation, or has it been a little different?
I mean, it's always this sort of mixed bag of stuff, right? They ask for a lot of different topics for sessions, and so you've just got a lot of different stuff. So it's roughly met the expectations that I would have had for it. I guess coming into the show, one thing that I've just been really interested in for the last few months is fraud and how people prevent it. And I can see from here several different fraud companies. Like I think in terms of presence, that technology has gotten way bigger year over year because it's just become this bigger and bigger problem. Have people been talking about it to you at all?
Yeah, I actually have some people I used to work with. They've actually jumped over to the fraud prevention, trying to figure that out. It is a big problem. I personally didn't know a lot about it. I've learned a lot from other people, and it's just only gotten progressively worse with advent of new technologies. I'm only assuming it's going to get even worse with AI stuff playing in that game and just making fake documents look more realistic.
Yeah.
I know some of them are really bad and easy to tell, but I only think it's going to get worse and harder to tell.
Yeah, I can tell you a few things because it's hot off the press in my mind. I basically interviewed all of the best of breed vendors because it jumped up the list of priorities for people, right? It was a background thing 2 years ago, and this year you've got senior people saying it's the biggest problem I'm trying to solve right now. It's due to a combination of, like you said, the technologies on the bad guy side are getting very cheap, very accessible. It's a bit of a hangover from the pandemic. So during the pandemic, you had all these eviction moratoria. You then had this sort of industry that sprung up. You had like influencers creating these accounts where they would tell you how to avoid eviction, right? Yeah. So the same kind of people have now been telling people, here's how you get past the background check. Here's where you can get fraudulent documents from. And, and so now you need to do something about it. And the thing that sort of interests me talking to all of these different vendors, they mostly solve the problem in different ways to each other. Most of them, they're either primarily thinking about this in terms of we're going to figure out if these documents you're giving me in your application are fake or not, or they're thinking I'm going to use bank records to qualify you as a renter, which is an interesting difference because your temptation when a lot of people are trying to defraud you is that if you've got this problem with fraud, the consensus sounds something like 7 or 8% of applications across the industry are subject to some kind of fraud right now. It's very common. When you've got bad stuff like that happening, your temptation is to say, I need to protect myself from it. Yeah. And what some of the vendors are saying is, yes, but you're going to shut a lot of people out of properties if you're just trying to stop fraud, because there are going to be people who you should accept as renters who are going to fall foul of these checks. And those companies tend to be more looking at it from the perspective of, I want to figure out how financially stable this prospect is, right?
And what the root cause is, I'm assuming. Why are they even seeking these fraudulent documents? Is it a simple fix? Is it something that if they just fixed something on their end, that it could actually help curtail that? Is something I've wondered.
The fix to the problem is probably to make it easier to evict people again. So I'll give you a good example. I was talking to an owner-operator who's based in the Midwest, who has a few assets in Atlanta, right? So they're not Atlanta-based, so they don't have the same relationships that an Atlanta-based company would. But he was saying that we have these assets in Atlanta, and in multiple of our properties, there's at least one delinquent resident that owes us like $50,000 or something like that. It's really because we just can't get them out because it's taking a year to evict people. Of course, because there's this industry now of I can Google how to avoid eviction, how to post a fake document, or whatever it is. People are very well educated in how to maximize the amount of time they get to stay in a property. So they know what things they can do to restart the clock on eviction, and the courts are jammed up. And yeah, that's the closest thing to like a root cause of the problem. It's just relatively easy to do, and we need more ways to protect ourselves from it.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say, and I hadn't thought about this at all before I started doing this, is the ones who are thinking about it more as a problem of, I want to know how financially stable Evan is. It's not, I'm going to figure out, I want to figure out if Evan's trying to cheat. It's more like, I'm trying to figure out whether you can afford to live in this apartment,
Sure.
which is a factor of, are you trying to cheat?
Yeah.
Or do I just happen to have a lot of different sources of income, right? So I don't have one pay stub that tells the whole story of what my income is. I do some gig work. I have some other sources of income. It sounds like Gen Z renters, they have more and more diverse sources of income. And that's actually a really important thing. So the traditional background checks that we do, the credit screening and stuff, it doesn't piece together. Evan makes all these different...
It looks unstable, yeah.
And you need like smart technology to read what your income is like, and whether or not over the course of the year it puts you over the threshold where we think you can afford to live.
Whatever your average is.
Yeah. So that's big, and I suppose it shouldn't have surprised me, because you have companies like Flex and like Best Egg who are specifically solving the problem of I can afford to live in your community, but I might struggle to pay my rent on the first of the month. So you have products that help people with that specific problem. So I guess it seems to be the case that, particularly once you get into the pool of Gen Z renters, people just have more diverse like financial backgrounds than they used to.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't think this is going away anytime soon. So the technologies that prevent or try to figure it out are only going to grow and get better to keep up with the technology that is creating the problem.
Yeah, we're in so there's some very smart AI that's being used to look for really subtle signs that documents have been faked.
Yeah.
But the bad guys are also using AI to get better at making perfect documents. Yeah. We're in this arms race between the bad guys and the good guys in terms of what they're going to get the AI to do. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's going away.
Yeah. From what I understand, bad guys, they keep being bad. So.
Yeah, very true, very true.
They can make $1, okay, I'm doing it. So that's how that works. The next thing that you mentioned that you've seen a lot of, and this has been building, I know, is centralization, both from the leasing standpoint and even the maintenance standpoint. What are you seeing maybe pre-show and just in the environment of multifamily, and what are we talking about here at Apartmentalize?
Yeah, again, heading into the show, I'm generally really interested in centralization as a topic. There's a couple of things I'm really interested in about it. So I wrote in the annual white paper this year about how I actually think the work that we normally associate with assistant property managers, like the admin, the accounting, collections, deposit handling, like all of those sort of back office tasks, it seems like we're moving to an environment where all of that stuff is going to be done off-site, which is a good thing, because I don't think anybody who works in property particularly enjoy. Well, some people enjoy doing that, and they should get to specialize on doing that on behalf of more properties. But most people, if you're a front office-y property management person, it's not accounting that gets you out of bed in the morning, right?
Well, and if anything, hire somebody that's professionally adept at that. Like they went to school for accounting or finance or whatever, something in that field where numbers are their thing. They're going to do it well for a grouping of properties, and then you're going to have consistency as well.
Yep.
Especially if you work with an owner, you're a third party, they want consistency in reporting and all that kind of stuff for their communities. It makes a lot of sense to just have one person providing reports to them.
Yeah, and people who've done it, particularly the admin stuff, who've done exactly what you just described, they say the program kind of pays for itself, because what you find is that your consistency, it means that when you don't make mistakes like I forgot to post this charge, or I forgot to change this move-in or move-out dates, or all these small like errors that happen when if you've got 50 properties, there's 50 different variations on the theme of how we do like admin. When you start doing that consistently, you close all these loopholes and you get rid of all these like little mistakes, and you just get all this free money.
Yeah,
that's what people tell me.
So there's less headcount, So that's obviously a savings.
Right.
But also maybe your errors are reduced, and that will also save you money or make you money, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Both, they're the same.
What you really realize about this is it was never actually that good of an idea to do that stuff on property in the first place. I was listening to Jerry Davis, who used to be the COO of UDR, talking about this on a panel a few weeks ago. And he was talking about one of the problems with the admin staff is that nobody ever gets good at it at property, because all of the things that you're doing, you do infrequently. If you're leasing and you're touring people all the time and closing leases, like, you can get really good at doing that. But month-end accounting, you do once a month, right? And you have all these sort of relatively complicated things like that you don't do regularly enough to be good at it. So you're context switching all the time, and it means it's just not as good of a job as it could be, and you don't get the consistency that you would want. I think it's going to start to look weird to do any of that stuff at property anymore in the not too distant future. So that's one thing. I'm really interested in the fee management problem, because I'm really aware that when you go to these conferences, you hear these really interesting things that companies have done, but it's usually like a REIT that's talking. And most of the industry is now not like that. Over the last decade, the industry has become way more third-party managed than it used to be. And you can't do the same stuff that a REIT does if you're a fee manager that has dozens of different owners in that market.
Because one might be very hands-on, the other one's like, do whatever.
Yeah. No, exactly. Because the benefits are all in like consolidating stuff. That means you need to get everyone on board, and nobody ever walks in lockstep in this industry. So for them to get the same benefits, they need different solutions from the Camden or UDR or one of those companies has done. And so the thing that interests me the most, and something that I'm going to be doing work on between now and Optech, one thing I noticed started happening in 2023 was that there were some third-party managers who were starting to give people the option when they're doing a property deal. You can either staff it the conventional way, we'll have 3 front office staff, or we can have 2 front office staff, and we're going to sell you a set of centralized services, right? So we're going to do all of this work in our shared services center, and you pay us for it on a per unit per month basis, which I think is a super, super interesting model. It's that's a very different approach from the ones that you hear about at all the conferences. But I don't see how that doesn't start to become really common, because just because I'm third-party managing a property doesn't mean it should be more expensive to run than it is if I'm an owner-operator. Right. So people are going to find solutions to these problems, and I think that particular approach is one that we're going to see growing.
Yeah, I think it opens up the door for more specialization. So then you can have on-site people, maintenance especially, who are not on-site, but more centralized. Somebody that's better at fixing air conditioning,
right,
or plumbing, for instance.
Exactly.
And then you don't necessarily hire somebody that's not with your company. You can just have a plumber, and they go around, they fix the plumbing. I don't know.
It's true actually. So again, I think maintenance is really different, because it's not about trying to reduce headcount. Right, it's about how to stop wasting money on stuff that I don't need to be spending money on. So in the example that you gave, if I have somebody that's appliances is a good example, right? So if I'm, instead of saying I've got 5 properties in this market and each property has 3 generalists in it, I'm now going to start thinking about that as a pool of 15. So like maybe one of those resources is going to be somebody who spends all their time fixing appliances, right? So they're based maybe at one property. They're going to drive a truck around from property to property if the properties are close enough together, and they're going to fix all of the appliance problems. What happens then is you haven't increased your costs at all, because you've just specialized one of your resources. And what happens then is you never see another invoice for an external repair company.
And so they're expensive.
Right. And the thing is that everyone thinks about it in terms of, we want to try and think about maintenance the same way we think about leasing or something like that. But it's very different. Like, the money is in those savings, which are a bit unglamorous, right? It's a sort of $500 at a time saving. But
and you might spend more on those people being specialized.
Correct.
Like, they may get a better wage,
right,
but overall it's still going to be cheaper.
Yeah. No, I was talking to a big operator who's in the process of rolling out a new centralized staffing model to part of their... He was telling me, like, I want to pay people more money. That's my objective. I want slightly fewer people, but I want to pay them more money so that they'll stay longer and they'll be better at their jobs.
Because there's a huge problem in maintenance. in keeping people.
Correct.
But it seems if you let them be specialized, they would feel, honestly, more marketable as a person. They'd be able to make more money for their family,
Yeah.
and they would stay longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of, so actually my favorite session that I went to yesterday, I went to a session on centralization, which discussed it from like an HR perspective. So it was a few big companies were talking about how they were changing the sort of, just the general, what they call it, human capital management, their workforce, right? They were changing the way that they managed people and they managed careers within their organization to reflect the fact that roles are getting more specialized. And the thing that I really liked, one of the companies, I think it was Widener, was the company that was showing this, from your neck of the woods, right? They put up a graphic of, they've moved from a career ladder to what they call a career lattice. So the idea, traditionally we have this concept of a career ladder, right? So you go from being a leasing agent to an APM, community manager, to a area manager, to a regional, you've got that pretty unidirectional career path that we conventionally think of. And now you've got these opportunities to, all right, we have lots of these functions centralized now. Some community managers actually want to move sideways into some centralized role and get some exposure to that. And potentially later in their career, they might move back into the VP of operations and career path. I haven't thought about the concept of the lattice for a long time, but I remember I read a book years ago by the head of HR of Deloitte Consulting, and I think they were the first people to talk about this concept of a lattice, right? Because in their consulting organization, the real problem that they had was with like maternity leave, right? So you had an increasingly diverse workforce, like it's much more of a 50-50 workforce in what used to be quite a male-dominated industry. But you have this problem in a very aggressive organization like consulting where you keep having to move up this ladder. What happens when I want to take a career break to have a baby, right? That was often a deal breaker in consulting organizations, so that they had to solve that problem. And the thing that they ended up articulating was this model where instead of, you have a sort of selection of career paths that you can go sideways and up on that create this flexibility to do things like take career breaks for things like having a baby. So that was the context in which I'd heard about that thing. I'd read about that thing before. And yesterday was the first time in years I'd seen that. But what they were showing was, if you imagine the sort of lattice structure, you had property management, you had maintenance, you had accounts receivable, each of which has its own career path. And you had ways, you now had all of these specialist roles called out in each of them. And there were now sideways and up like moves on this thing. And it's a very cool way of doing it. If you think the end game of centralization is that we want people to be more specialized, this was a really cool structure for thinking about how organizations do it.
That's cool. I think it makes a lot of sense that they would start adding a bigger variety of positions. Even I think it's wild that so many companies haven't adopted somebody to be over their adoption of technology. Mm-hmm. Like they throw it on their marketing person or whatever. And I'm just like, you're leaving it to the marketing person to decide what you're going to use for the rest of like operations or whatever it is. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me that you would just throw it on a roll. Oh, that person's just going to do that from now on.
Yeah, that's been a big thing with technology for a few years, certainly now. You talk to a lot of CIOs of companies, and one of the problems that I started to hear about maybe 4-5 years ago or something was that because there's just generally always more and more technology, it means the number of people that make decisions about it keeps growing, right? The CIO isn't necessarily across every technology that gets rolled out in their organization. So CIOs will tell you, we have shadow technology organizations within our organization that I don't really have any control over. And all of these vendors know who's able to sign off like their projects and stuff. So you're right, it's the governance of that stuff ends up getting quite squirrely.
Yeah. So I think there's an opportunity there, like to have that lattice, plug people in that can make it both easier for the property management to adopt things, I think, but also us to talk to the right people that will understand it. Yeah, so that they can adopt it faster potentially too.
Yeah, and if you think about being in a property management organization, just thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up, right? Mm-hmm. That's always been quite straightforward. And now it's okay. you get a lot of uncertainty with this stuff, right? That's that's very natural. People don't like change, but when you can put it on a picture and say, all right, this is what it's going to look like.
You have a lot more options. Yeah, because I've talked to so many people that are on site, and they stay in a certain role because they don't want to go that ladder of leasing, assistant, and manager, then regional. That's not interesting to them. Mm-hmm. They like selling or whatever. Maybe marketing's interesting, but like when you only have 4 options, it doesn't really give you those, like, this variety. Yeah. It's like, all right, that's my options, and I don't really want to do that, so I guess I'm sticking here. Yeah, I think that's interesting to be able to have specializations, because then I really like doing that, so then I want to pursue that route.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely going to be more and more of that, I think, going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think most of the people that you interview tend to be at property, right?
No, they're everywhere.
Oh, really?
So I've talked to leasing professionals. I've talked to property managers, assistants. I've talked to maintenance techs and regionals, all the way up to CEOs. So I've had a variety. It's very interesting. It gives me a good perspective to be able to meet such a variety of people and what they have to say, what they're trying to do, what their passions are, because it helps me think, okay, when I'm trying to sell something, our product, for instance, you try to sell to the right persona, the right people, but at the end of the day, the end users are, for us, the resident and also the site people.
Right.
And if I'm selling to not those people, at the end of the day, it still needs to be something they understand, that's user-friendly, that's plug and play. Because I think so often we forget about the education level of people on site is all over the map. And their technology adoption, like their capabilities. Some people, it's really easy. They can plug and play, use anything. They get really curious. They want to play and learn and all the things. That's how I am. But I realized over time, 40, it took me a while, that not everybody's like me. And some people, they're like, you give them something new and it freaks them out.
Yeah. I guess you're going to have more and more opportunities to talk to people who are in roles that haven't existed for that long, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Which is cool, right? Yeah. That would be a super interesting point. Okay, how's it going?
Yeah. How's this new job?
Right.
It hasn't existed before. How's it going?
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll take some time to find its footing and stuff, but I think the other thing that we always need to remember is looking outside of this industry.
Right.
Like you brought up consulting, for instance.
Right.
Like we got to make sure we don't get so hyper-focused on recreating a wheel or something. It's other industries, like there's things that are comparable, like hotel, hospitality, and other things that they do it similar stuff, but different in the way they manage. And even like the shadow similar world of HOA, like they have property management companies and property managers as well, and I'm starting to interview those people, learn from them as well. That's part of our business and who we sell to as well. It's just interesting because there's like similarities but differences, and I think we need to be sure that we're looking around at what other people do and not just, we got to make it from scratch.
Yeah. No, that's the thing, that there is just always a multifamily version of everything, and we do probably reinvent the wheel like a bit more often than we maybe should.
Yeah, technology, for instance, there's so much tech out there.
Yeah.
And not all of it needs to be created specific for this. We could be adopting something that could be really handy for multifamily. Tweaked a little, maybe. I don't know. But yeah who knows?
So the only other thing that was on my mind, apart from your office project, which I'm really interested in. I've been following that on LinkedIn. But the other thing that was on my mind, we should admit, we're on the REBA booth, real estate business. Yeah, real estate business analytics. They did a really good session yesterday with a couple of operators and an asset manager, and they were talking about this very interesting, this very unglamorous sounding, but really interesting problem of like amenities.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges that you get to try and get revenue for the stuff that we put into apartments, we charge for amenities, and so what we put onto leases gets more complicated. Everything's negotiable, right? And so what happens is, if you think about the process of leasing a unit, maybe you changed something about a charge. Maybe you removed a charge from a particular unit in order to get the price to where you needed it to be to lease that unit. Like stuff like that happens all the time. Or you change the name of something in the system, and because in multifamily you sell your product for a year at a time, right? All of those changes, nobody thinks about them again after you've implemented them. And what happens is most communities, if they haven't gone through and audited every amenity, that they have a bunch of stuff that's incorrect on their system. And basically, when you audit and fix those problems, again, you just get a load of free money. That's what this session was about yesterday. And Paul Bergeron from Journalist was asking, how do companies' data get so bad in the first place? It's like, how can it not, really? Because there's all this complexity around a lease, and it's a whole conversation, like leasing a unit. There's going to be individual stuff that gets done, and if you're not disciplined about fixing everything, then your data's going to be bad and you're going to lose money. So it's funny, it's this very classic dirt under the fingernails, grimy problem.
What were the amenities, like charging for certain amenities and maybe starting to do that where it hasn't been something they've done before? Is that kind of what it was about?
So typical problem is that all of the units on this side of the building on the 5th floor have a view, and there's a view premium for it. But maybe somebody reset that amenity to 0, or maybe for some circumstance relating to when they rented that unit. And then when you look at the thing that Reba does, they visualize like the property. When you look at the 5th floor, you'll see like premium 0. You'll see that there's this mistake in that unit, and if you don't correct it, like that unit gets leased without that premium attached to it. You have really weird stuff as well, like people will have a positive and a negative charge for the same amenity in a unit, right? The stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And again, it's all to do with circumstances that applied at the time that unit was being leased. But when you do what Reba does and you just put it on a map, like a visualization, it's really obvious that, okay, hang on, everything in this column has a fireplace. Why doesn't this property have it? And you find, again, it was just a mistake. And if you correct it, you get to charge the money for it. And It works the other way as well. Sometimes an amenity price is too high, but because somebody didn't change it, that unit is going to take longer to lease. So again, if you can spot that this has got an amenity, a value on it that's too high, I'm going to lease that unit more quickly because it's going to be the right price.
Gotcha.
So interesting. It's just good housekeeping stuff with data, but it's free money if you fix it.
And I think it sounds like that tool would be really good. We have software for us, for Community Boss, that you can make money off of your parking and your amenities.
Right.
And when I say amenities, I'm talking your clubhouse, your whatever extra things like activity-wise that you want maybe exclusive access to.
Right.
And I think a lot of times they forget about. They could charge for that. It doesn't always have to be free, especially if you want to use like the clubhouse for a birthday party. Right. Sometimes people do that, but maybe the process isn't very good. It doesn't have it built in. Like for us, you could reserve it, pay for it, pay a deposit, all electronically, sign all the waivers and the things like that, but also have control access. So you put something on the door so that you get a specific code, and then you punch it in because you did all the paperwork and stuff. We give it to you, and now you have access. But it would be interesting to see that plugged into the mix as well.
Yeah.
Are you doing a good job of even reminding your residents that this is available as an amenity to rent?
Yeah.
Because you might have it, but is it easy to rent? And also, are you reminding them that it's even there?
Yeah.
Because you always sell it at the beginning, all the amenities, but how well are you actually marketing it ongoing that this could be another revenue stream that you're just not doing a very good job at?
Yeah, and especially in this market that we're in at the moment, if you're in any Sunbelt market at the moment, like the thing that you want more of than anything else is additional revenue, because it's
can't raise rent right
now. It's so challenging in the Sunbelt. So yeah, stuff like that. I noticed this when I was doing the 20 for 20 paper this year. Like the things that people were prioritizing in terms of what technology they wanted, anything that has an incremental revenue stream attached to it goes to the top of the list. That was the perspective. No one was that interested this year in, we want to think about the long-term strategic projects that are going to deliver long-term benefits. It's all the things we really want to do is anything that, it's like they're putting their hand down the couch to get the spare change out to make up the fact that they can't grow rent elsewhere. So anything that has incremental revenue attached to it is great right now.
And forgotten is the parking lot.
Yes.
Like people, because that can be seen as an amenity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you got parking spaces that are closer to where you live, or closer to the elevator, or whatever. You could charge a premium for those.
Yeah.
And if you have the right tools, like we have that, but there's other companies, I'm not going to lie, there's other companies that do what we do too. But there's just all these different avenues to make that extra money that I think are a lot You build this parking lot, and it's like a sunk cost.
Yeah.
This behemoth of a thing that you got to maintain, but you don't think of it as a way to make more money.
Yeah, and you have problems to solve as well, right? Like you have buildings that are underparked, right? So you need where the technology helps is I can use that space better and solve the problem of people not having enough parking space just by being intelligent about how I organize it. That's another problem that this potentially solves.
Yeah.
I'm working on a project at the moment with Ingrain, like the map company, and we're basically studying all these different problems about having different applications look at the same map, like solves.
Yeah.
And parking is super interesting because you should be able to charge a premium based on where this parking space is relative to the door that I have to get to from my apartment to walk out to the car. As the crow flies, this space is close to this unit, but when I think about where the door is, which is something I need a map for, and when I think leasing is more and more done by people who are not based at the property, you have this opportunity to add that layer of intelligence, and ultimately that's a really good parking space based on how many steps you have to take, so you should pay some more money for it.
Yeah, we actually have a parking map for that very purpose. Okay. So that it's a tool for the manager. They can see where it is and then mark each space with a price, right? And who's already reserved it, or it's attached to whatever unit and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's very interesting, like kind of a forgotten area, honestly. It's just, it's just parking, it's whatever. It's like, no, man, you can make some money. I don't know. Talk about it. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. I know you wanted to hear about my office.
Let's talk.
So, yeah, I've been on a journey of adding space to my home. I've been doing Boss Talks for just over 2 years, heading up to episode 100. Super excited to be at that number. And I've, truth be told, been doing it out of my garage. Behind me is usually a curtain. Behind that is my garage. So most people don't know that, but that's what's going on there. And I have a workbench with all the setup. I have a camera, microphone, all the good stuff. But it's all there. But other than that, I work from coffee tables and coffee shops. So finally, 10 years, I think, of working remotely from home, I've decided it's good and I don't think changing. So I need to have a space. So I'm building a studio/office in my backyard. And I have a building now. It's been painted. I have insulation. Now I got to add the power and drywall and carpet and all that. And then hopefully within a month, I'll have maybe a ribbon cutting. Maybe I'll even crack a champagne bottle over the side of it. I don't know. But I am pretty stoked about it, so that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see what kind of aesthetic you go for. I'm picturing a sort of Joe Rogan experience style, like backdrop, with a big sort of microphone.
Yeah.
It's funny, when COVID happened, we were building a house, right? And already Zoom calls were like, it was clear like we were going to be doing a lot of Zoom calls.
Sure.
And we changed the design of the room that was going to be my office to put the bookshelf, like really big bookshelves behind. Because we just figured you need something good in the background when you're on Zoom calls. And yeah, I'm curious to see what aesthetic you create.
Yeah, it's a 10 by 12. It's a decent size. I'm going to have multiple walls. So I'm thinking, okay, I need different walls for different situations. Almost like I got a studio going on. Yeah. So I'll figure it out.
Okay, awesome. I look forward to it.
But I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to be able to set up shop, work, and not have to put it away. Put it in my backpack or whatever. So that's been my life. So, but Dom, so glad to have you. Definitely. I don't get to do this in person very often. Yeah. It's usually a studio from afar. Yeah. So it's always good to have people in person and be face to face. So I appreciate you doing this with me, but been great. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.